Hello, it's Josephine here, and welcome to another episode of Studio Biz and all that jazz. Today's a little bit of a treat. I've got a very special guest on today, which you're about to meet in just a few moments. His name is Dr. Shane Bransdon. Now, I actually met Shane probably about a year ago. It was at the Junior Theatre Festival in Newcastle, Australia. He's one of the founders of that event, and it is it's super mega. It's the largest of its kind here in Australia. And yeah, it's just a celebration of young musical theatre artists, the studios that are involved and the production companies that are involved in putting on these particular, show titles. My Musical Makers Club is very much a part of that. It was our first time attending though last year. And I have to say it was a wonderful experience. The reason I brought Shane onto the show was because he reached out to me just a couple of weeks ago, whatever it was, to be a speaker at this year's Junior Theatre Festival, which I'm really excited to do. I get to speak to other studio owners and teachers. So they have a professional development workshop as well, not just for the students, which is the 2-day event, but also for, like I said, the studio owners, the business owners and the teachers. So I'm going to be presenting for them on the day, which is this weekend. And it's come by so quickly. And then I thought, Hey, Dr. Shane, why don't I get you on my podcast? Now, he's going to be talking about, a variety of things, including his PhD, where he did a study of the theatre industry with some insight into different business models, as well as audience behaviours, which was really interesting. He'll also be talking about JTF, which is the Junior Theatre Festival, and the benefits of doing overseas tours, these sorts of topics. But there's lots of discussion points. I think you're going to be really intrigued once you have a listen. Now, Shane is an actor, director, and educational specialist based in Australia. He has directed several pilot productions for iTheatrics New York, contributing to the development of new Broadway Jr shows. Recent pilots include Dot and the Kangaroo Jr., 2021, Hans Christian Andersen Jr., 2020, and the Big 1-0 Online Edition 2020. Now, we probably all remember being online, right? Which was a very interesting time. At the time, I, created Peter Pan Breaks the Internet, and that was our online production. So I know that online space very well. It was a very, very interesting time for musical theatre and studios and all sorts of, artistic programs where we had to work virtually. But I do remember Big 1-0 Online, and that was a very cool production process. I had a couple of students a part of that, so that was very cool. Now, prior to founding iTheatrics, Shane was a teacher and drama lecturer at the University of Newcastle, where he completed his PhD in communications and media arts, specialising in the ecology of the theatre industry. He is the artistic director of the Newcastle and Hunter Combined Schools, Anzac Service, and president of the City of Newcastle Drama Association. So lots going on there for Shane. So very interesting chat, and I reckon we just jump into it. This is going to be a good one. Let's go. Hello and welcome to Studio Biz and all that jazz. I'm your performing arts business coach and host, Josephine Lancuba. This show is designed to bring you inspiration, information, and the instruments you need to create and grow the studio biz of your dreams. I will bring you a mix of solo episodes as well as interviews where I tap into the minds of industry experts. My career started as a performer over 2 decades ago. I later became a speaker, theatrical producer, and talent manager, as well as having a successful teaching career in singing, drama, and dance. 10 years into my professional journey, I became a mama of 2, and with a baby on my hip, opened up my very own performing arts studio. From hardship and humble beginnings to 4 studio locations and a multi-six-figure performing arts biz, I know how to attract students and keep them coming back for more. And in the show, I will share with you my experiences to help you thrive and fast-track your path to success. I know you have a spark inside of you with dreams and goals for the future. As your coach and mentor, I'm here to help you step into your limelight and be a cheerleader in your ear each and every week. So get ready to be entertained and inspired as we talk studio biz and all that jazz. Hello and welcome, Dr. Shane Bransdon, to Studio Biz and all that jazz. Thank you so much for being here.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Now, I met you, well, we've chatted online, but I also met you last year at the Junior Theatre Festival, and there's so much that you do. Some of the stuff I mentioned in the intro, but what I would love for you to do is let everyone know what it is that you do in this world, and then we'll start backtracking soon. But I want everyone to know, who are you and what does Shane do?
Sure. I'm a performer and director. I call myself a theatre maker, but I'm also an educator. And after graduating from a drama degree in arts, I became a school teacher, and I loved that role. I did that for 12 years and became an executive within the Department of Education, which was wonderful. And then I sort of started this side hustle a few years before I retired from teaching, and it was all focused on the Junior Theatre Festival, as well as my company, which is Travel Gang, which is a company that specializes in taking students overseas on performing arts trips. So I still get to work with students all of the time, but I also get to travel, and I get to work at all of the 5 different junior theatre festivals around the world: Atlanta, Sacramento, Auckland, Birmingham, and the one here in Australia. So I kind of feel at the moment that I have the best job in the world.
Yeah, you sound like you really do. That is so amazing. Now, you mentioned that are you still a performer, or you were a performer? Take me through that journey. Like, how did you actually start your acting career, or, where did it all begin?
Well, I think I was one of those students where in the late 80s, early 90s, they thought that anyone that was loud and perhaps a little flamboyant should do speech and drama lessons. And so I started when I was 5 years old. And then I did a lot of drama through high school, and then I studied drama at university and was always involved in community theatre, which is it really is the heart of our industry, and which coincidentally later led to me completing my PhD in a field which includes the community arts in Australia. But then I actually undertook contract with an agent, a talent agent, when I was at university. And like all young artists, I did the constant audition after audition, and was also creating my own work on the side. I believe that to be successful in our industry, you have to be multi-skilled. I was stage managing, I was doing professional lighting gigs. I was doing a lot of, sort of fell a lot into theatre and education, and was doing a lot of, I had a lot of great paid gigs doing theatre in schools and during school holidays for small pro-am companies and things like that. But when I became a full-time teacher, that sort of became a little bit more limiting in terms of having the agent. They like you to be able to be at the audition, the day after they call you.
Oh, drop of a hat, yeah.
Oh, yes. And also, acting is really great. I particularly love stage acting, but when you're going to those casting calls for like a TV commercial, and you're in the room with 50 other blokes that look like Calvin Klein models, I sort of got the inkling that was not about talent, and that, my creative juices were better squeezed elsewhere. And so, being a teacher was really wonderful. And but I still perform. Just last year, I was in a fabulous production of Chicago, and I got to play the MC, which is always, how you have those dream roles that you come across So yeah, I still do a little from time to time, but with the travel at the moment, since COVID, now everything is picking back up. A lot of schools are asking us to take them overseas. I just got back from a wonderful drama trip with the Cranbrook School. We took 50 of their boys to Japan for a week of, we were doing Buto workshops, we were doing kabuki, traditional no Japanese theatre. And then we actually dragged them to London, which was amazing. And they did complicite and frantic assembly workshops and Shakespeare's Globe, and it was really, really fun. But sort of at the moment, I think I need to take a break from performing to have room for these other things.
Yeah, totally. When you go on these trips, I mean, I know that it's very much youth-focused events that you're organising, but do you get to participate, or is it just too hectic and that's not on the agenda?
Oh yeah, and it's wonderful professional development personally, not just as a performer, but as a teaching artist as well. So, you know, I'm in the room with other fabulous teaching artists. I can't speak, you know, highly enough about the team from Frantic Assembly in London and the great physical theatre that they do, which is a passion of mine. So it's wonderful getting to learn from them along the way.
Yeah, what a great experience. Look, I'm actually a talent agent, so I get what you mean when you, just circling back, when you talk about the commercial space. And I think it's so lucrative, the you know, commercial space for actors, but at the same time, I do know what you mean. Like, you sit in a room and there's Calvin Klein models in the lineup, and you do realize, oh geez, I do recall, I remember I got a bit part in a major television series many years ago. And I've studied all these years for acting, and this was my first gig. And honestly, I'll never forget it, because I walked away feeling like total shit. They got me to be in underwear and a t-shirt, and I had to say, hey, John, you know, to bed or something.
Yeah.
And that was it. And I remember standing on set going, I feel like I've trained for 10 years to say this one line in my underwear, and it's not, I feel like I just don't feel good. This doesn't feel good.
Yeah. And I guess the great thing though is the industry is broad. And though there are those gigs, particularly TVCs, that rake in a lot of money for you as a performer, and that's great to keep you going to fuel your other interests. But being able to create your own work, you know, write your own cabarets and take them on the road, and be able to direct stuff and teach as well. Like, it allows you to you know, have a fulfilling career that's not just focused in one area, which is really
and I do love that. And I actually say that to my clients often: create your own opportunities, create your own, you know, professional performance company, create your own work. And I do think that is so valuable. Now,
don't be afraid to hang a light. I think it was you reached out to me not too long ago. You know, every corner of Australia at the moment is desperate for stage crew. And, you know, we're getting calls up here in Newcastle saying, can you please send people to Sydney to crew? We'll pay $500 a day. We'll put them up in accommodation. They're just so desperate. And that's a great side hustle as well, as, you know.
And it's so fun too. Like, I do stage management and things, and I love it. Like, it's actually really cool. And it keeps your, you know, it keeps your finger in it a little bit as well. And I think it keeps you connected to industry. There's nothing wrong with that, picking up the odd job in that way. I am interested to hear about your studies. You mentioned you have a you know, PhD, and it's not often we have an actor that has doctor in their title, so I want to hear a little bit about that. Tell me about that. And you've studied the theatre industry and explored different business models. I mean, that all sounds very interesting. I must admit, I'm not a university graduate, so walk me through what that looked like.
Well, there are a few different ways to approach a PhD. You can undertake creative projects. I have a very close friend right now who's writing a screenplay or a screen series for her PhD. And she's a wonderfully accomplished playwright. So her project is creative. I've had other friends undertake like creating documentaries and things like that. But the other option is to create a research-based theoretical style PhD, which involves a thesis. And my area of study was essentially creating an ecology of the theatre industry. And from my observations as a practitioner in the industry, particularly sort of at producer level, understanding how governments create policy around our industry, how they fund our industry, support through, provision of performing arts space, and was trying to look at an understanding of how, there is a sense within the industry that we feel undervalued, particularly after having some, quite a period of conservative governments at federal level, where, every time that there was fiscal cuts to the budget, it always seemed to be in the arts, and it filtered through to education as well, the university degrees in humanities, the TAFE system, the creative arts programs at TAFE. So my PhD really started as a gripe that we didn't have enough support as an industry compared to, say, this sort of wonderful Haitian period in the 80s and 90s where there were professional theatre companies in every regional town in Australia that were sort of no longer there. So I started this project, and the university actually invited me to come on board to complete it as a PhD. And what I looked at was, how do we value not just the economic output of the arts industry, because that's what governments seem to constantly look at and try. In the gig economy, it's very hard to sort of quantify all of the employment that's offered, and including value adding as well, like the restaurant that's next to the theatre. How much money are they making off the theatre and the industry that is associated with their establishment by proximity? So I actually developed a model because I saw that most governments were just purely looking at economic capital. So I developed a model for assessing the condition of the arts industry by also considering cultural capital, social capital, and symbolic capital as well. So learning about the added benefits of theatre as an art form to the wider population, not just the dollar figure. And something else that was quite unique about my research to date is that most research in our field does not include community theatre. And I did, because as I mentioned earlier, I do think it's the heartbeat of the industry, and there's still employment generated by community theatre, and the role that it plays in terms of cultural capital and social capital in our society is really, really valuable. Whether it's participants that we're adding to the value of their life because they come and participate and they get to sing and they get to form a community in their area and invite their friends along and come and watch us perform and have this sense of purpose in their life. How do you value that? Imagine an Australian society where we didn't have that to feed into so many people's lives.
Yes.
And so that's what my research looked at.
I really love that. And I think it's so important to look at the cultural aspects as well. I mean, obviously, financially, I understand that, governments looking at it from a financial point of view. And it is fine. It can be very lucrative. It's disheartening when they don't value it, but the cultural impact, society impact is huge. And it isn't just the people participating. It's not just about the artists. It's the audience. It's the community. And And even just finding, I didn't think of it that way when you talk about, and the restaurant benefits and that place benefits. It's so
Oh yeah, I think every hardware store in Australia is somewhat supported by their local theatre company buying paint and all of the hardware needed to constantly build sets. And when you look at community theatre, they have huge turnovers in shows. The show doesn't perform for 6 months; it performs for 2 or 3 weeks, and then 2 weeks later, there's another show, and so they're constantly building new sets.
Yes, absolutely. I do love that. And look, even when I think of it from my children's perspective, as a mum, I've got a 6-year-old and an 8-year-old. Now, my daughter's a participant. She likes to be in the art. My son, I try, but he's just not interested. But he loves being in the audience. And I underestimated how much he values that experience, because I produce shows all the time within my, my musical theatre youth group. And, there's one show I didn't take him to, and he got so mad at me. He's like, how could you not let me? I just didn't realize you loved it so much. And recently we have like a reading challenge at home, and we've got a rewards chart, and they get to choose their reward for reading. And he said, Mum, can we go to the opera house if we finish our reading challenge? And I went, oh, we sure can.
Yeah.
Like, my job here is done. He doesn't want to be in it, but he loves to experience it. And he's 6. I think that's really magical.
Absolutely. Well, and they're the lives that we enrich. I remember doing a show in my early 20s, and we sort of did this small regional tour, and we went through the Illawarra Performing Arts Centre, and then we sort of had a 2-part tour. We came back there like a few months later and performed like an extended season. And this patron came to me at the stage door and gave me a bottle of wine. And she said, I came to see you a few months ago and I wanted to come again because, I'm having some troubles in my life at the moment. And for the 2.5 hours of your show, I can completely forget about my troubles. And that's the joy that we bring, or the escapism that we bring to everyone. So, my PhD was to advocate for more funding for the industry. It was also supposed to be, useful to theatre companies and looking at the different business models. There are a lot of different options, and so many businesses, when they're looking at, because essentially in my research, half of the 48 theatre companies that I surveyed were at financial risk of closure. 50% of them, which is kind of scary. So looking at business models that work, and perhaps, companies that need to evolve as well.
So what works? Tell me.
Well,
what works.
well, it's interesting, because I believe, my personal theory is that there's kind of 3 broad categories of people that like to perform or create, or theatre makers. They are the people that are doing it solely for community theatre, which is their vocation. That's what they love. It keeps them going. And then you have a subset of people who are so passionate about creating art. It's entirely focused on the love of the audience. These are the people that create experimental work. They're the people that write their own work. They're usually more smaller indie people, and it's usually the quality is very high, but they don't have a huge commercial following because it's original work. There's no sort of title branding equity. They're not performing the next big Mamma Mia. They're creating work. And then you have the other subset, which is the people that are doing it for their occupation, and they do get forced into the commercial world of things. And so the interesting part was, to be financially successful, my research data looked across the board at quite a few things, but in terms of things like marketing, for example, the theatre companies that indicated that they spend 15 to 20% of their budget on marketing were much better off than the companies that didn't have the capacity to do that. So, there are a lot of creatives who spend so much time creating the work and the costumes and the set designs and all of that they almost need another person to remember to sell the tickets.
100%.
It's the business of show business that sometimes gets in the way of people's success. In youth theatre companies, particularly in terms of being able to support their establishment by having weekly workshops and things like that.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I do. So I started off very much about the art.
Yep.
And I feel as though now it is commercial. I love it. It doesn't change it. It's just different.
It is.
I'm not at the Fringe Festival.
You have to pick the show that you're doing, and sometimes you might have to do a commercial type title to allow you to do something more experimental.
Absolutely. I mean, look, I've had my days where I've performed at the Fringe Festival with an original work to a room of 20 people, and I've just loved it. I've just been so engaged in that process, and it felt really rewarding, even though there's 20 people in a tiny club room. You know what I'm talking about,
Yep.
Fringe Festival style. Did that for years, and yeah, now it's very much commercial. But for me, it really needs to be, because there comes a point. I mean, I tell this story, quite a few times, but when I was pregnant with my first child, and I was still like, gigging and all that sort of thing. And I think I was 4 months pregnant. And that's when I say, when I was 4 months pregnant, I hung up my microphone because I just couldn't do it anymore. Like not just because I had kids, but I was tired. I was over it. And I think there comes a point where I need to make money from this. I can't keep doing it this way. So that's when I went commercial, actually, when I had my daughter 6 months on my hip. I'm like, I'm going to sell art. I'm going to create stuff. I'm going to run programs and workshops and create shows, but for the marketplace, with an educational purpose that is sold to schools, or, and I was very, very strategic from that point on, because I felt like I needed to be, and I don't regret it for a second. I think I had fun. Yeah. It's still fun. It's just different fun.
And that's really smart, because the process of understanding your audience, like building an audience to begin with, if you're a theatre company, building your audience, understanding and keeping up-to-date data on what they like, what they want to see, so that you're producing work that you don't have to try to sell too hard, work that they will naturally come to see. And each theatre company is completely different in that. And they really need to understand their audiences and maintain those relationships with those audiences. So there's something we talk about, which is title equity. And it basically, I referred to Mamma Mia before. People know what it is. It's on their list of top favourite, whether it's the ABBA, whether it's off the film, whether it's off the regional or the Australian national tour, things like that. And I've had great conversations with Stuart Hendricks from MTI, who is the licensing holder of that show. And he says, there's never been an unsuccessful production of Mamma Mia. So that's one of the biggest challenges for producers in selecting a title that, you're doing yourself a favor by, because it will sell itself.
I really like that you've called it title equity, because I know it and I understand it and I do it, but I haven't coined a phrase for it. So I've written that down because I do love that.
It was a great honour to be invited as a guest speaker on the Professional Development Day at Junior Theatre Festival 2023 here in Australia, where I talk about unlocking the key to student loyalty and great retention in your studio biz. Now, to celebrate, I created something that I think not just the participants of the event will benefit from, but something that you can also enjoy at home. I've created a student re-enrollment and retention checklist, which is absolutely free and yours to download. All you need to do is go to the link in the show notes or head to josephinelancuba.com/checklist1. In there, I cover the 10 core ways to retain students between enrollment seasons and terms, covering areas of great planning, community engagement, workshop and event strategies, effective communication, marketing techniques, and more. To download your student re-enrollment and retention checklist, head to the link now. Okay, back to the show.
You know, what's interesting is a lot of people listening to this show are performing arts studio owners, not just theatre, not just musical, like we're talking dance and everything. But do you know what? You can, they run themed shows. So that title equity can actually be used in a different way. Like if we're talking about, you know, back to the 80s, and then you use famous artists like David Bowie or whatever, I'm just talking now, but you get my point. You can actually use that in your marketing, you know, instead of try a ballet class, it's like, come be in our David Bowie spectacular. You know what I mean? Like, we're going to have a routine to that. We're going to have a routine to, you know, we're going to bring back the music from Greece or whatever. And I understand licensing, but we're not talking about that. But you get my point. Like, you can actually use title equity in any studio environment if it's a themed showcase event. So that's actually really interesting.
Well, something that probably, because there are so many different aspects to my research, but something that might be particularly important for studio owners, like you're talking about their dance studios, etc., is there was a common misconception within the industry participants that the media, the free media, like editorial media, you know, news channels, radio, print media, that they're not supportive of the arts, you know, and there's a constant argument mounted that, you know, why is there so much sport in the newspaper every single day, but not enough art? And through my research in the field that I looked at, which was the Greater Newcastle region, it was a misconception, because the obstacle there was that those studios and those companies weren't actually creating media releases by someone that has experience as a publicist and a network within the media industry to send it to. Like, essentially the essence was studio owners expected that, you know, news stories would just come to them. And the reality is, anyone that uses a proper professional publicist, and you can get them cheap, or they might work pro bono, might be one of the parents in your dance school that is a publicist that has all of the email addresses of all of the media outlets and knows how to put together a newsworthy story. Like, there has to be an angle that's going to attract the news, and that's what publicists are good at. They will do that work for you, and it's not as simple as them emailing it. They'll email it, and then they'll get on the blower and they'll be ringing, following up. Did you see this media release I sent you? Have you thought of this, etc.? And they do the work for you to get that media support. And the editors that I interviewed basically said, like, that's the professional procedure to get stuff in the news. And
they're craving it. They want stuff, you know, and it's not a flat advertisement. Of course, there needs to be, you know, something interesting to grab the attention of the editor or whoever is in charge. But I actually just wrote that down too. I love these ideas, I tell you. Be proactive when it comes to media and publicity. I mean, I know this for my own personal self as a personal brand. And I pay a digital marketer for my studio business. And I talk to my clients about paid marketing. But I actually love that you've inspired me to think about reframing that and how I can support my clients by actually getting them into the press. That is so clever and so simple, and something that you're absolutely right. Studios don't do it. We're talking about 0.05% here that you might see. Oh, wow, they're dancing on, you know, the morning show. Like, you see Nikki Webster Studio and people with those sorts of brand names, right? Because they've got a name.
And
but she's always got her studio forefronted.
And the people that do use professional publicists get heaps of traction from it. They'll get front pages in magazines and newspapers, or, you know, on the morning show or whatever. It's a no-brainer.
Yeah. And, you know, it's really interesting too, because people will assume that you need to be a Nikki Webster. And for anyone listening overseas, by the way, Nikki Webster's like the golden child of Australia who sang the national anthem at the Sydney Olympics, wasn't it?
Yeah, she was like a lead performer in the opening.
Yeah, and that's how she became locally famous. So to us, she's locally famous, and we grew up with her as a household name.
Mm.
She started a music career in Australia, and now she runs very successful studio businesses. So if you're listening, Nikki, we've met. Nice.
Very generous with her time and her celebrity as well.
100%.
You know? And
but you
that's
don't need to be
another...
Nikki. That's the point. You don't need to be Nikki to get in the papers, but you do need a little bit of an edge and something to intrigue them.
But that's a good tip too, because having an ambassador for your studio is something that's also worthwhile. I saw that there is a wonderful the youth theatre company called Fantasia Showstoppers out in Richmond. I think they are, Windsor, Richmond area. And they just had Jay Lagaya come and work with them and run a workshop with their students and sort of become this ambassador on social media for what the goals that they're trying to achieve there. And that's a great way to get media publicity as well.
Yes, leverage off star power, and you can absolutely, and local stars. We're not talking, you don't have to get Nicole Kidman in, but you can get some really cool people that have a little bit of an edge when it comes to getting you into the press.
Yeah,
that is clever. Now, actually, let's talk about that. So, press releases with the Junior Theatre Festival. I know. Because I've been a part of it, and last year my Musical Makers Club won the Outstanding Vocal Award. Hoot hoot! It was our first time there, and we won the award. We actually couldn't believe it. We're like, oh, yeah, it's amazing! But so that was really exciting. So we're back again this year.
Right.
But you guys did actually have that press focus, that media focus, to help support the studios. You had a couple of, local celebrity names. I think it was Paulini last season. Yep. And you got to go backstage as the winner and take these press release professional photos. And then you sent out basically a template of how you can send that pitch to your local press. Yep. And I thought that was really great, because I think a lot of people do struggle with knowing how to word that. So what was the purpose in relation to that? Like, are you seeing that? Is that something inspired from other events, or you guys came up with that, or
well, it's actually the philosophy behind the Junior Theatre Festival Australia and the Junior Theatre Festivals worldwide. The philosophy is that it's actually not a competition. This is not Dance Mums. We encourage everybody to come in, and it's a celebration of youth musical theatre. But what we understand is important is building music theatre programs across Australia is essentially our goal. So what we know, and this is particularly relevant in the United States where the festival started, theatre companies compete for funding, they compete for attention, they compete for enrollments, and the whole concept is that we don't think any theatre company will have funding cut if they are proving that they're doing great things on a national level. So the whole point about coming to the Junior Theatre Festival is that you get that opportunity to be acknowledged for something wonderful that your group achieved. And then you get some great photos and a press release for you to share in your local area so that you can keep building the profile of your theatre company wherever you're from. So that's kind of the philosophy behind it. And so we follow that model from the United States, and we have our own publicists here in Australia, though, because they're very different. The United States media releases are so waffly, and we learned quickly that Australian news outlets aren't interested in them. So we have our own publicist who drafts those and provides those templates to each group so that, you can go back and celebrate and get in your local news, because that will, I presume, help you retain your students. It will help you get more students. We have found that with the Junior Theatre Festival, Now we have dance studios, we have, drama, theatre ensembles come, and we have found that it's actually helped each studio almost add a product to what they sell. So a lot of them will run their junior theatre festival troupe as a class for the term, and they'll spend the whole term creating their performance to bring to the festival for adjudication. And so they'll obviously charge their weekly rehearsal fees.
That's what we do. We actually do it as a workshop series.
Yep.
So we do it as a 4 workshop series, and then they get to perform. And these are quite lengthy, like these are 3-hour blocks. So that's how we actually do it, and we charge for it as an additional service. So it's actually been an additional revenue stream for our studio. And it should be, because it's a lot of time and effort. And honestly, the uptake, at first I wasn't sure, because we have to charge a few $100s for the education side, but then they buy a ticket to the festival, which is totally reasonable. But then because we're in Sydney, it's in Newcastle, people have to buy accommodation. And I would have thought that, maybe people weren't going to be interested in that. Maybe it was too much. But I was surprised. The uptake has been really positive. People love it. We've got kids coming back from last season. It's been a really positive experience. And like you said, it's not Dance Mums. It is very much about the community and the education. So the adjudication part was just really one small part of what is a much larger event. So, we had everything from the workshops, and then the kids got to actually watch some of the more, the pilot kids performing. So they get to watch some stage production works, and, there's a stage presentation, and there's, all this stuff. There's a disco, like there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was really, really cool.
And
why did you choose to focus on youths more so than like adult training? What was the focus?
Well, I mean, we have professional development for teachers as a part of the festival, and there are
I'll be speaking at that.
You will. You're presenting this year. That'll be fabulous.
So excited about that.
We have, so this year, like it's a completely sold out festival for us this year, students as well as teachers. We've got, I think, 110 teachers coming. Some of those are bringing groups, and some are just coming for the professional development. We have international, they call them clinicians. I always find that such a sort of scientific vibe, but I call them teaching artists. We have some from Broadway coming, we have some from West End coming, we have some from different parts of the States, New Zealand, we have local presenters as well coming. So it's sort of a one-stop shop for professional development. But in terms of the whole festival is a celebration of youth music theatre, and it's the biggest one in the Southern Hemisphere. It really just came about because in 2015, I attended the festival in Atlanta with a group of students, and there are 6,800 students at this festival for 3 days.
Wow.
It is like the most energizing festival experience that you could have. And again, not a competition. It's this complete vibe of celebration and inclusivity, and they have the most amazing celebrity performers there, people of all walks of life and abilities. And, they have big draw cards too. Zac Efron came, I think, the year that I went, and Darren Criss, and each year. And it sort of is attached to all of the junior shows, the Little Mermaid Jr, Annie Jr. So there's a relationship between those products and the festivals. And we had just done one of those shows and saw on the back of the script, there's this festival in Atlanta. So we had no idea what we were going to. And we went to it with, I think, about 60 students and their parents, and we just went, Australia needs one of these. So the co-producer Daniel Stoddart and I flew back to New York and met with the producers of the festival. At that point in time, there was only one, and it was Atlanta, and then Australia became the second festival, and now there's another one in Sacramento, Birmingham, and Auckland, which is really cool.
That is so amazing. How many people, I know we're a smaller market, obviously, being in Australia, but how many people do you get registered for these events here in the Southern Hemisphere?
Yeah, so this year we're up to it's close to 1,400 for our
Wow,
festival
that's
this
so
year.
amazing.
Yeah, and that includes students, parents, and all of their choreographers, directors, music directors that
And this
all.
is in Newcastle, just saying, right?
Ah,
It's
yeah.
not Sydney, and it's not, this people travel to this thing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And that was a really, we talk about business models. That was an integral part of deciding where to host a festival like this. And when we spoke to them in New York, they said, we don't host a festival in New York. We have it in Atlanta because you need a permit to cross the road in New York. And with, 6,000 kids that they have at their festival, it's just not achievable. So the capital cities sometimes aren't the best places for these type of events where, there's too much regulation or too expensive as well in terms of venue hire.
Totally. Venue hire alone, forget it. It's ludicrous.
And we looked at all of the data again. We did our research. MTI shared their data with us of where all of the postcodes are for people that were staging productions. And I think at the time there were about 500 junior productions every year in Australia. It's now tripled since we started, but most of those were on the east coast of Australia. So we kind of went east coast, Newcastle, great regional airport, can fly in from anywhere in Australia, train line from Sydney, and it's really built to be something awesome.
Yeah, I love that so much. Now, I know, like you said, you're doing it locally, Newcastle, amazing. Tell me about the overseas stuff. You actually bring people overseas. Is that the Travel Gang?
Yeah, it is. So Travel Gang, basically that trip that I said I first went on in 2015, which introduced us to the festivals, we used a travel agent to book the group travel, and we just had a really, really terrible experience. And at the time, I was a deputy principal in the school system, and I'd organised overseas trips with music ensembles and things like that. And I was quite disappointed that the travel agents did such a poor job of it, and Daniel and I said we could do this better ourselves, and we sort of created Travel Gang from there. And through our affiliation with the festival, we started to get groups that are part of the JTF family wanting to go to other festivals around the world, and we started to coordinate that travel for them. But now it's grown into something much bigger, and we're essentially the only group tour operator that is run by people that have expertise in the arts. So, that Japan trip I've just come back to, we did a Buto workshop with Kan Katsura, who is the poster boy of Buto dance, and when we spoke to some people about wanting to do a workshop with him, people literally laughed at us and said, he's a celebrity, you'll never get him. But we did, because I had a chance to sit down and have a cup of tea with him, and we talked about the philosophy of art and Buto as a postmodern surrealist dance and what the power of that is. And so, when I we have a lot of schools now contact us for overseas travel, it's become really a competitive product, can I say, in the world of studios as well as private schools. They're using it as, not only is it really visible, like you get great marketing collateral out of a picture of your kids at doing workshops in Disneyland, or doing high kicks down Fifth Avenue in New York City, but it's sort of become this great competitive product, and it shows your community that you're offering more opportunities than what anyone has ever sort of experienced before. So we're now doing, as I said, a lot of private schools. We do a lot of trips to New York, a lot to the West End, and we're working with American groups. We're working with groups in New Zealand. We're taking groups from the festivals to other festivals, and it's just it's kind of really exploded, which is great fun.
That is so amazing. Do you go on all the trips? Are you actually on the road?
I'm usually on the road, but because school holidays are popular, and we will usually have like 3 school groups each school holidays doing trips. So, but we have a full team, and everyone on our team of guides that go on the trip, they're all actors, directors, writers, people that are in the industry, so they have a really clear understanding of, you've just done this workshop. Unpacking it, when you leave with the kids, and making those comparisons and saying, so we just did traditional Japanese no theater with the mask work, and then making a comparison with that and Disney's Lion King designs by Julie Taymor, and going, can you actually see the correspondence here? She's taken Eastern theater as an inspiration for her design work. So being able to really give the kids that really deep level of learning from their trip.
I want to be in the travel gang.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, we always need great enthusiastic people.
Yeah, if you need
something I would just
let me know.
something I would add on that, I've had 2 academies this year come back and tell me that they advertised that they were doing a trip. They kind of advertised publicly on their social media, and they had phone calls from people that weren't part of their studio wanting to join. So it's interesting that that's proving to be an extra draw card for people as well.
Yeah, I love that so much. Well, we're coming towards the end of the show, but I have a couple of final questions to ask you, because I love to ask this to my guests, and I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. But how do you define success? What does it mean to you?
Success needs to be self-fulfilling, and you can't achieve the feeling of success without setting goals and working hard to achieve them. So success starts with setting a goal, and then developing sort of backwards mapping strategies on how you're going to achieve that goal. And there needs to be short-term goals and long-term goals, but you definitely don't feel success unless you undertake that process.
Yeah, so you sound like a planner. I am too. I am. And I do believe that, we can dream big, but without, a good plan and taking action, that we just, we won't get there. And the truth is as well, success can evolve. So, you might have a goal, but like you said, short-term, long-term goals. And that's really important to define. There are different paths to success as well.
Yep.
What's been one of the most successful things that you've created, do you think?
Probably, that's a big question, isn't it? Like having the ability to inspire other people, particularly the young students that we get to work with. And it's not something that I achieve on my own. We say that we're here to help you inspire your students. And being in New York, walking with a group of theatre kids who have just spent the last year and a half fundraising for their trip and getting jobs and getting them to live their dream for the first time at the yellow cabs and the fire escapes and the steam coming out of it, like getting to be there with them to see how it opens their eyes to the world, and it shows them that their goals are achievable. The kids that we deal with want to perform on Broadway. They're pretty serious about what they're doing, and getting to be with them there and have the ability to experience that with them is so rewarding.
I love that. And I love that you're inspiring so many people, but who or what inspires you?
I think it's really, really important to have mentors. I've been so lucky. There are young people, and I was probably one of them, at a stage that just think that they already know everything, and aren't prepared to listen and learn from other people. But I would not have achieved hardly anything without having really solid mentors. So my advice to anyone listening would be, think about who your mentors are, or who you might like them to be. And it's an honor to be, when someone kind of approaches you and asks you questions, or to be a mentor, learning from others, making mistakes, owning your mistakes, and really appreciating that, because there are so many young people that I do get to work with as emerging artists who just think they know everything and aren't prepared to listen, and they're doing themselves a disservice.
I think sometimes that comes with maturity and time as well. I know that when I was younger, I thought I knew a bit more than I probably did, to be honest. Now, though, I love to learn, and I have mentors. I have mentors that are both paid mentors and free mentors, and complete variety. And I'm happy to. I'm so grateful for those people in my life that are mentors that aren't, they're not coaches or paid people. They're just people that are, mentors in my industry, in my life. But then I also am happy to invest in mentorship as well. And I think if you don't have a circle around you that can mentor you, some people just don't have the network. They don't know how to find the network. There's nothing wrong with investing in that, but I do think it is absolutely essential. And it can be in the way of a podcast like this. It can be books. It can be it doesn't have to be, coaching or mastermind stuff, but it can be accessible learning. But I definitely think spending time on that is so important. So
we've got a great JTF family, and this year we're introducing a new event which is for the teachers, and we're calling it speed dating, but the concept is for all of the teachers to get together and quickly introduce themselves and find out who's doing what show and what costumes do you have, and how we can support each other in a way of mentorship.
That's actually huge for everyone listening, musical theatre, costuming and props and sets, because it's such imagine recreating the whole of The Lion King, right? It's a big deal. So if someone just did it 2 weeks ago, only an hour's drive out from you, and you know that you can hire those costumes and get access to them, oh my goodness, it's a beautiful thing. Like, for example, we're doing Frozen Jr at the moment, and our costume director is, she knows all the musical societies. So she's like, going, they did Frozen last month. Yeah, give them a call. Yeah, great. Yeah, we can loan the costumes. Oh, we have to hire them. That's fine. No problem. Great. Excellent. We'll grab that. So good.
Yep.
So that's actually really handy in your space. So what's next? What's next for Dr. Shane? What's going to happen?
We are, we always look at in the head in a 5-year plan. We have a 3-year contract with the Junior Theatre Festival with the City of Newcastle, which is wonderful. They are a local government that value the arts and sponsor the arts, and they want to remain the city host. So we have that agreement with them. Beyond that, we'll need to look at how the festival can grow, because we'll reach our capacity within that particular space, perhaps, and whether that means that we still have it in Newcastle, but the festival goes for longer, and we might have, school groups versus community groups at different times throughout the event, or
fringe style. You start,
absolutely,
rolling it out into the other venues of the local area.
Yeah, we're in a lucky position at the moment where we've been able to scholarship some opportunities for disadvantaged schools. We want to do an outreach program where we can provide some capacity building. We've got a school in the Northern Territory that we're looking at that has a high Indigenous population, and we would love to work with them on some of their organic storytelling with their culture, and see if we can try to give them opportunities to showcase what they're learning about as well. So we've got some goals. It always comes down to money, but we're lucky at the moment to have some good corporate sponsors.
And theatre art is expensive. Yeah. We do know it. So how can people find you? Where's the best place for them to look you up?
Great. Well, the Junior Theatre Festival website is iTheatrics, which is oztheatrics.com. We're also on social media, Junior Theatre Festival Australia, on Instagram or Facebook. And if you're interested in adding a tour as a product to your dance studio, and it might be the situation that you don't have enough within your studio, but you're looking for a partner studio to perhaps do a combined tour with, that might be from another city or something like that, you can reach out to travelgang.com.au and check out what's there. But
And we'll pop all those links in the show notes as well.
Great. Thank you.
Yay. All right. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. That's been really, really super awesome. And I cannot wait to be a presenter at the Junior Theatre Festival this month. I'm really looking forward to it. And of course, bringing my gang down to my youth performing arts kids. And yeah, we're going to bring Frozen Junior. So that'll
Awesome.
be fun too.
Can't wait to see
it. Thanks so much, Shane.
Thanks.
Bye.
This episode was brought to you by my signature group coaching program, Studio Biz Success, an amazing and accessible online educational platform for performing arts studio owners designed to help you grow your business with confidence and get your results. Check it out at josephinelancuba.com along with other great industry resources to help you leap into the studio biz you deserve. If you love this episode, be sure to share it with your friends. You can tag me on social media at Josephine Lancuba and give it a review. Your support helps the show to grow so I can continue to provide you with useful, informative content. I'm Josephine Lancuba, your biggest cheerleader. Thanks for listening and shine bright.